this. All right, that's just that's the way to start. That's the beginning. Okay, Paul. Skye, see, he surprises you. He's a wonderful person, very kind, and has lots of stories. So I'm going to have to cut him off at some point, or he's going to be here for 2 hours telling all his stories. I've already
given it a lot of thought. I'm trying to.
And he's a baker. And behind you are some muffins, I think muffins that he made. So we have a treat in store.
Yeah, muffin surprise, corn muffin surprise.
Wonderful. You tell me, are you ready, Paul? All right. Well, my goodness, Skye, thank you very much for participating in this project. Paul and I had this idea, and it's going to be fantastic. You're the second one to be interviewed, and so I have some little questions, and then we lead up to the big one about how you discovered the valley. But first of all, what's your name and where do you live?
Anton Vincent John LePanto, and I live in Woodacre.
Oh, John. John LePanto. Okay, how did you get Skye?
I didn't know my name was John until I got my birth certificate when I was in my 40s. Okay. My mother didn't tell me. But her father's name was John, so I was named after both my parents' fathers.
Oh, that's the story. Oh, okay, I got it. All right. Where do you live in the valley now?
Woodacre.
You live in Woodacre?
Yeah.
Okay. And tell the story of how you discovered the valley. What made you come here? Tell me all about that.
As briefly as I can. And, okay.
Paul will signal if we start getting bad.
in 1971.
1971, okay.
1971 in Heber City, Utah. I was staying in a motel waiting for work with a man. And I wanted to have a smoke and a cigarette, and I didn't have any tobacco and I didn't have any cigarettes. So I thought I'd go around town and look and find some place that sold cigarettes, a cafe or something like that. And there wasn't any tobacco sold anywhere. But then I saw a billiard parlor. And I thought, well, maybe there. And I went in there, and sure enough, they had Bull Durham in these little sacks for a dime.
Yeah.
And they had these 3 punch boards on the counter, 2 small ones and a larger one. And the night before I had this dream, I was in a baronial hall. The ceilings were arched and the walls were covered with brocade drapes. And there were 5 women walking toward me. And I was at a window that I had climbed up on a wooden ladder to this small arched window like you see in a church. And I was looking into the hall, and they were walking toward me. And there was one woman in the middle holding a baby. And there was 2 on each side, and they were all singing to the melody of you can't always get what you want. But they were singing, your heart must be light as a feather. And I thought, wow. And I just, she came down, she climbed the ladder too, and handed a little girl to me. And then the same night, an old man, I don't even see the guy in the dream. He just says, you're an Asia. There were 3 of them, and the last of them came here in 1533. Well, there's a long story attached to all of that, but to bring it up to date, more or less, now it's some years later, and I'm in Point Reyes Station, and I get a copy of the Pacific Sun, which I haven't seen before. And there's a section in there, the calendar of events, and it's a time for the Renaissance Fair. I don't know anything about that. But there's a picture of a jester in a tree. And there's a wooden sign hanging there saying, Black Oak Forest, 1533. 1533. Oh, so while I was back at that billiard parlor buying the tobacco and looking at that punch board, I could see it had 2,500 holes to punch out. You take like a sardine can key and you push it, and there's a little roll of paper comes out, you unroll it, and there's your fortune. And there were 6 prizes, 6 silver Kennedy half dollars, 1964. And I thought, I should be able to calculate where the 1,533rd hole is in this board. And so I punch out the 1,533rd hole, and I win one of those silver half dollars. Kind of confirmed there was something going on with 1533. So I'm in Point Reyes Station, and I'm wondering where Black Oak Forest was. And I had been staying in Inverness for a while, and I saw that there was a woman camped out over at the White Horse Pool, and in a small Jeep with a baby, and she was parked in front of the Point Reyes Pharmacy. I thought, I'll ask her. She probably knows about this area. And I asked her, do you know where the Black Oak Forest is? She said, sure, yeah. She tells me that's where the Renaissance Fair is. And we became friends, and she was Kate Heflin, Van Heflin's daughter, the actor Van Heflin. And she had been there. She knew Alan Ladd. She was a kid. He was Brandon DeWilde, the boy in the film, was her first boyfriend. They used to hide when they were going to shoot, and they had to come find the two of them someplace and get him into the scene. So she's staying at Cheddar Ranch later on at the fair. Yeah. We became friends at the fair. She had a horse that she kept there. But she also had a place out here at Cheddar Ranch.
Yeah, that's in Taylor Park.
Yeah, she was up there somewhere. She had a camper up there. Well, alongside the pharmacy there was a little early in the idea of food pantries. They had a small room there where they would give out butter and cheese from the Department of Agriculture. She told me about the food bank here. So I came here in about I came here first in 76.
Okay.
Yeah, I stayed up on Meadow. A friend of mine had a girlfriend up there, and I had a camper, and so I would stay, and we'd visit. He'd stay with her, and I'd sleep in my camper. And then again I came here in 91, but that's after we began the food bank. I went to the food bank here probably in 78 or 9. And there wasn't much there at the time. But she would come here for food, and so that's what led me to come here. Oh. And then I found out that they took, at that time you could do this. You could donate stuff. And so I knew that over in Greenbury behind, because I had a girlfriend that lived there, at the shopping center, at Bonnier Shopping Center, behind what was then Petrini's, which is now Molly Stone's, there'd be a whole hopper full of bread every day. It was just for bread alone. Yeah. And it had all the typical white loaves, and then it had other baguettes and rye breads and everything. And I would load it up with bread and bring it here and bring it to the food bank. Then they had somebody operating it at the time, a woman named Lulu, and a man named Lou, and then Lulu left, and then Lou left, and I had been coming regularly and helping out. And then they left, so I wound up doing it. I did it for 10 years alone because I really enjoyed doing it. And at that time we'd get sometimes 48 cases, that many cases of canned food.
That you had to find
and I'd unload them, bring them in, and then put all the food in different cabinets, tomato sauces, and canned fish and tuna and salmon and canned vegetables and dry beans and dry pasta, and they all went in different places in the room so people could find them. I made sure that the tall articles were in the back of the shelves, the medium height articles were in the center of the shelf, because you had to stoop down. At that time, a lot of Mexican people came here, and there was one old granny. She was only about 5 feet tall, so she had to get down there. So I made sure that all the small stuff was in the front. because everybody wanted to know what was in there, and they would take it out and put it on the floor and look in the back. So I was trying to make it easier. They would speed things up.
This was in the 70s?
No, by that time it was the 80s.
By that time.
Probably 80, 81, 82, something like that.
So Arnold Erickson.
I did 25 years of it.
Yeah. So that was before Dave Court, who came in 1990. So you were
I wasn't sure when he came. I remember the first day I saw him, and I thought, oh, they must have got themselves a new athletic instructor. Because he looked athletic, you know. He had,
right.
He had a typical sweatshirt on.
Yeah.
And that was 92 or 3.
Yeah, right.
And I had...
The one you had met before, Arnold Erickson, he was studying to be an attorney.
That's when Susan was here?
What?
Susan Kahn or something like that?
I'm not sure about that. But he was there with his girlfriend. They both worked there at the center. But then he went to got his license, and that's when we advertised for a director in 1990, and Dave answered the call, and we liked him and hired him.
He wound up being the perfect guy for the job.
That was kind of in between that time. You were still doing a lot of that work. Yeah, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he seemed to be just the right guy for the job.
Oh yeah. He's done a good job. Yeah. He's been there over 30 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So where are you living now?
Up on Redwood in
On
Woodacre.
Redwood? Is that your home? Do you own the property?
No,
or
I don't
you're
own
renting?
it. I rent it. And your next guest as the owner of the property, Dorothy Cox, she'll be talking to you next. You got her next on your list. It's enough for the two of us to take care of.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Yeah. Well, let's see. I can't think of any. I've got your story. Is there anything else you'd like to say as we wind up here?
Because it was from Woodstock to Woodacre. I thought about writing something about that.
That's the way you like to say it.
Well, I was in Woodstock. And it was in Woodstock that I met Bob Perelot, a fellow that was 10 years a seminarian monk, and then he was 10 years dean of a college, and then he ran off with one of his students. And he came to Woodstock, and he came from San Francisco. And I was looking for him.
Oh.
Because I had gone out on a job from Colorado that sent me up into Washington State and then Idaho. And in Washington State, I was going to work with this. They were taking core samples for copper mining. And this was a couple of guys with a camper and a stack of beer. And I thought, hey, I'm not staying for this. So I left, and I thought, well, I think I'll go look for Bob Perelot in San Francisco. I had heard that he was in Sausalito. A friend of mine said he was in Sausalito. I knew that Bob would always go in the bar at night and have them set up 5 martinis, and then he would drink 5 martinis. I thought he should be easy to find. So I go to Sausalito looking for a place and asking around. And then while I'm in one place, there's a guy standing outside the door, bobbing back and forth from Woodstock. I remember seeing him there in Woodstock. Never spoke to him. I said, do you know Bob Perelot? He said, yeah. I said, do you know where I can find him? Yeah, where? Stinson Beach. Miracles happen all the time for me. The small potato, I mean, it's just like, so I drove up on the, outside the Mill Valley, and he slept in the bush, this guy. And then we drove down the next day into Stinson Beach, and sure enough, there was Bob Perelot. So that indirectly, Woodstock led me here.
That's amazing. Well, I think we can conclude with that, Paul. That's a great final statement. Led me here.
You got to be final, huh? You don't want to hear about Bob Dylan?
Oh,
because I was working for him in Woodstock when I met Bob Perelot and David Boyle. To mention their names because they were instrumental in my getting here.
I think we're going to have Skye another time. He's got
No, I
a
can't.
raft full of stories.
Yeah, I got a life full of them. But I don't do well with planned events. I get anxious the day before.
Yeah.
I don't sleep well the night before.
Oh,
So I don't plan things a day in advance. It's
okay. I got it.
during the night while I lie awake for a couple of hours usually, I figure out what happened yesterday, what I did yesterday, and what I do tomorrow.
Well, he's doing.
I'm trying to
he's
fill you
doing-
in here with.
He's doing fine, isn't he, Paul?
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you very much.
Okay.
Skye.